sustentável, holístico, que integra o homem à natureza. É com esse marketing que uma construtora seduz e convence os compradores a apostarem em um mega empreendimento que vai mudar completamente a dinâmica de um pequeno vilarejo na costa oeste do México e que vai também pôr em risco o acesso de sua população à água, à praia e a seu patrimônio. A comunidade local, claro, não compra a ideia e uma batalha começa. É justamente essa luta que Patrimônio, longa dirigido pelas premiadas Lisa Jackson e Sarah Teale, acompanha. Elas conversaram conosco sobre os desafios de filmar essa história e, antes de mais nada, responderam: qual o real patrimônio? Confira.
That's how the fishermen referred to what was at stake. They chose the title, not us. You know, the beach and all of that was part of the Patrimônio of Todos Santos. It belonged to everybody, and that's the thing about a Patrimônio. It's a shared treasure, and right. That someone would try to steal it or change it without consulting the town is a crime. So Patrimônio was early on, wasn't it, Sarah? It was an early title.
Right. And it's also the Patrimônio is their water. You know, water is an issue. It's becoming an issue all over the world, but it's a big issue in Todos Santos, in Baja in general. And the water is their Patrimônio, their way of life. You know, they really do appreciate their way of life and their families and you know, everything grows in Todos Santos. It's incredible. You have amazing fruit, vegetables. You know, it's very abundant, and that is their Patrimônio too. They want water. They want life.
We are kind of living in a dystopia. But inside each dystopia, there's an utopia. Like I like what you told us. You told us a story about this utopia. I don't know if you agree with it.
You know, the fishermen and the community are not against development. They're not against their town growing. They're not against, you know, more income and education and things for their kids. They just don't want to be taken over. They want it to grow in a small, sustainable kind of way. That makes sense, and I think that's what everybody wants, actually.
And there were two dystopias that were kind of revealed in the film. The first was the vision of the developers to basically take over the town, and the other is what it revealed about the Mexican justice system that favored those with the most money. That obviously a decision came down from a federal court, wasn't it a federal court, Sarah? That indeed now, all these many years later, none of the permits that the developers had were legal.
But how did you manage to film like for 3 years? Nowadays it's quite unusual, no? Everybody wants to film everything fast.
It couldn't have happened if Lisa hadn't moved to Todos Santos. I mean, you just sort of had to be there because you know, you can't plan in Mexico, it seems to me, but especially with this, things would just happen, boom. You know, you'd get somebody shouting out at your bedroom at 6 o'clock in the morning saying, get down here, get down here. You know, things would just happen.
And we started shooting almost right away. We went down to the beach, didn't we, Sarah, and saw these surveyor stakes. And there was talk of a development, and we started talking right away with the fishermen who were terrified about, they were already feeling the tip of the spear. So almost the next day or the day after, we started filming, and we never, ever could have anticipated what ended up happening. Nobody could have. So you just started to get on the train and hope eventually it pulls into a station.
At a certain point, we're like, oh my God, this has to somehow end.
Yeah, and I feel that you found a perfect protagonist. Like we can follow him. He's charismatic, but he's like a hero in the sense because he's local. He has knowledge.
He didn't want to do this either. He didn't want particularly to be in the film. He wouldn't, in the beginning, he wouldn't tell us when he was going to go and meet with the fishermen. He was very reluctant. He didn't want to be seen as the protagonist or a hero or anything. it's just sort of what happened to him and what happened to us. It just sort of happened. And by the end, he was fine. But in the beginning, he definitely, it was hard to get him to even talk to us.
How do you feel now, the reality in Todos Santos, Lisa, you that are living there?
Well, it's growing. It's growing out. It's going to the north, in an area where there is no water, and people have to fill their swimming pools with these huge water tanks that come rumbling down the road. But it's so far it's growing at a sustainable pace. I can't imagine this town if it, overnight or in a year had suddenly 5,000 more houses and 10 or 15,000 more people. It would have wrecked it. But I mean, my part of Todos Santos is relatively unchanged. My boyfriend is the rancher in the film. I don't know if you remember Quirino.
Yeah.
So I'm very much in the local community. I don't really know many gringos, but there are more gringos arriving every day, especially since the pandemic. A lot of gringos who live here part-time have come down here full-time because they feel safer here than in the U.S. But the town now is still pretty much shut down.
What did you have in mind, and what did you discover during this process? Because each documentary is a process, isn't it, of discovering?
It's totally a process.
When we started this, I think we were just thinking that we were going to make little short films that would help people in the rest of the town see what was happening on the beach, because people don't necessarily come out to Punta Lobos certainly even every week. And so we were just going to do little teeny things. I don't think we realized what we led ourselves into.
The water issue was front and center. A little bit before we started filming, there was a huge conflict in the city trying to stop an open pit gold mine that was going into the Sierra. That was going to affect the water supply for all of southern Baja, including the resort towns in Los Cabos. And it was basically shut down. But this is after years of protest, and it was over the water supply. It became a human rights struggle, as well as a struggle for water and for basic dignity.
That is the most difficult to make nowadays, because we are so anxious. We want the story done, like before we begin.
They wouldn't march unless, the camera was there. They knew, they got a sense about, I would say a year in, that what they were doing had value and needed to be documented. And they were so unabashed about being filmed. I mean, I was completely invisible. So gaining that trust was essential. And I think making these small films and showing them the small films was a big part of that. And some of the films went viral, so that the confidence that they had in us was unflagging, which really is important.
How do you think we could touch people from Mira and like, the powerful people who are the decision makers? How do we get to them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very hard. I think Lisa and I are used to our films making an impact and changing laws. I've had some films that have really changed some pretty significant laws. But I think it's more like a grassroots thing. It's more like an encouraging people to just stand up. But I wish people I wish the governor had seen it. Doubt he did.
Yeah, the governor does not look good in the film, so he has resisted several attempts that we've had to show it at the city theater in the municipal theater in La Paz. He would have to authorize that screening, and he has not let it happen. But it is being used in the Autonomous University here. They have a class in alternative tourism. And I actually talked to the professor, Sarah, last week, and he's going to share it with there are 5 other alternative tourism classes, one in Chiapas, another in Guerrero, so that these kids can, these students, and it's a hugely popular class, can learn about being a responsible tourist. you know, that you have to have a consciousness about how you are damaging or affecting the place where you are spending your tourist dollars.
Don't you think the idea of progress, especially in Latin America, is like an old-fashioned idea of progress?
Well, your president is kind of like the president in the U.S. He's a populist. He's letting people. I mean, what he's allowing to happen in the Amazon is going to affect people for hundreds of years. It's completely irresponsible. It's just where is his conscience? You know, I mean, there are countries that are doing it right. I mean, Iceland, or you know, that see the need for progress, but see the need to keep it completely under local control, and see they understand what is of value and what cannot be recovered once it's gone.
How do we see development from now on? You know, like how to be sustainable, not get stuck in time, but also preserve, you know, the environment, the real patrimônio.
And a lot of it is local initiative. I mean, we have an urban development plan, Plan de Desarrollo Urbano here, that, you know, it controls the height of the buildings. You know, you're prohibited to build on dunes. It affects the amount of water you can use. So every new construction is put under that microscope.
Were you afraid of being or ending up in jail, or were you afraid of these powerful people?
Yeah, It was scary. I mean, I had uniformed people show up at the house several times asking for me, and I at that point was in hiding, and I drove around with an amparo, you know, for 6-8 months for fear of being stopped.
Yeah, we contacted people to see about getting protection for Lisa, and they were like, just stop, you need to stop filming. And I'm so glad that Lisa didn't.
That didn't happen.
Thank you both. Thank you
as well.
Obrigada.
Thank you, Flávia.
Gracias.
A ustedes.
Essas foram Sarah Teale e Lisa Jackson, conversando conosco sobre o nosso real patrimônio. Fique ligado, que ainda tem muito mais conversa boa na Mostra Ecofalante 2020.